He's looking mighty.
He is
Look at
looking
that
mighty.
burly chest. Guy's been working out.
Let's get these players battling.
You want to know who goes to the Tarmo gym?
Cedric Phillips.
Oh, yeah.
So Jeff's going to start out with the Evolving Wilds for a Swamp. Cedric's just going to have a Forsaken Sanctuary.
And we may see these players do nothing on the early turns. Like, the most action they're going to have is probably going to be, like a Read the Bones. Jeff does have cards like Sylvan Advocate and Tireless Tracker that he could use to get the ball rolling, and Cedric does have access to this card. But these are two removal-heavy decks, so you're going to see each of them play with a lot of the cards just in their hands for the early part of the game, and then it's going to take a while for them to get to the point where they're exhausted of resources and actually top decking.
Well, Cedric's going to start out here where they Transgress the Mind. Jeff has 2 Languish, a Deadweight, an Anguished Unmaking, and a Ruinous Path.
And both players have Languishes, but the person in this matchup who draws more Languishes is probably going to be in a really painful position because they're a great card in the format, awful card in the matchup.
Yep. Looks like Jeff Hoogland has 2 in his hand.
Yeah, and if Jeff was against an aggro deck, his hand would be phenomenal, other than the fact that he's missing land drops.
Cedric's going to take that Ruinous Path. Jeff's going to miss his land drop and pass back. Cedric's going to read some bones. Let's see what he wants to do with these 2
Wow, and Cedric
cards.
is just firing on all cylinders. Opening with a discard spell straight into a Read the Bones is probably the dream scenario for this kind of situation.
Well, he's just going to go ahead and top both of those cards, draw 2, lose 2 life. Jeff does find a land. He has a basic plane, so perfect mana. Pass the turn back to Cedric Phillips.
And the most devastating thing that Cedric could do here is play an unanswered Gideon. Fortunately for Jeff, he does have access to an Anguished Unmaking in his hand. And Cedric knows that, so Cedric may pace his threats differently because of that.
Well, it looks like he has a couple copies of Secure the Waste in hand, which is a good way to attack that Anguished Unmaking. But
Yeah.
Jeff has multiple Languish in his hand to counteract those Secures.
Yeah. And Cedric, knowing that his Gideon would likely just die, he's choosing to make an emblem because that is the long-term thing that he can do that's going to be impactful.
And that's going to allow him to cash in these Secures on Jeff's end step, get in damage on his turn, and then Jeff will have to spend his turns using Languish, while Cedric's just going to be able to do that again and again. And if he can just do it for 4 and then for 6, that's just going to be enough to win the game.
For sure. These Secure the Waste tokens are going to be 2/2s because of that emblem. So Cedric is going to get a crash in for 8, and that is a lot of damage.
Fortunately, Jeff drew that Shambling Vent on his turn, which means he's going to have the mana to be able to cast Languish.
Wow, and Cedric is actually going to be able to put Jeff in an awful position if Cedric has another Secure the Waste, because Cedric is going to be able to cast Secure the Waste. He's going to be able to attack Jeff, and if Jeff goes to cast Languish, Cedric can just sack those 5 tokens to Westvale Abbey.
So Cedric's just going to Secure the Waste for 5, attack Jeff for 10 down to 2, and then just pass the turn.
Yeah.
Jeff Hoogland is going to go ahead and scoop that up. Cedric
Bam!
Phillips is going to take game 1 here against Jeff Hoogland. White-black control. Jeff Hoogland is on Abzan Seasons Pass. Let's go ahead and take a look at their sideboards to see how we think these players are going to board in this match. Cedric has 3 Duress, 3 Kalitas Trader of Get, 2 Eldrazi Displacer, 2 Thought-Knot Seer, a Deadweight, a Transgress the Mind, an Ultimate Price, an Obnixless Reignited, and a Linvala the Preserver. How do you think Cedric's going to board?
So the cards that I like are the 3 Duress. It's going to be mostly spell-based. Thought-Knot Seer for the same reason. Transgress the Mind for the same reason. And then also, I think that Obnixless is going to really excel in the matchup. And I could see him bringing in Linvala, but he may not.
Now on Jeff Hoogland's side, we have 2 Deadweight, 2 Den Protector, 3 Duress, an Infinite Obliteration, 2 Kalitas, Trader of Get, 1 Seasons Pass, 2 Transgress the Mind, 1 Ultimate Price, and 1 Virulent Plague. How do you think he's going to board?
So I think he's also going to basically bring in all of his discard and all of his card advantage. That's Den Protector, Duress, Seasons Pass, and Transgress the Mind.
He just gets to cut cards like Languish and some of the removal spells that don't hit everything.
Yeah, there's a good chance he also brings in the Virulent Plague because it's a good way to deal with not only Secure the Waste, but the Gideon tokens as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, Cedric Phillips, he is our media manager at Star City Games. Everybody else may know and love him as one of the original creature collection tokens.
Yeah.
He was a goblin. We have a lot of new creature tokens that have came out. So let's take a look at some of those. Currently we have the Otter Spell. You see we have that pin. You see we have that pin, but you can also get it in a playmat along with some custom sleeves and even player bundles, so we'll give you both of them. And there is this cute little tiger that you can get.
Ooh, I want to get the tiger.
The playmat, the
That one's
sleeves,
got my
and the
name
player
on it.
bundle.
A
Yeah,
lot
the
of you know
tiger.
I've got Cowlin Tiger as my Twitter handle. I have an affinity for tigers.
Is that the name of one of these tigers now? Just call him Cowlin?
Yeah, one's Cowlin, the other's a Johnny.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So
Even though Johnny's a lion, but close enough.
go to StarCityGames.com/creature collection to go ahead and pick some of those up. These things are very awesome.
Super cute, super fun.
Now, we talked a little bit about Cedric Phillips with his Goblin token. Let's talk a little more about Jeff Hoogland. He was our top points earner at the end of Season 1.
Yep.
He has 25 from Bloomington, Illinois. He has 13 open top 8s, 1 invitational top 8. He's a stay-at-home dad with 2 awesome sons and future Magic players. He manages several open source coding projects focusing on Linux, and he has a master's degree in mathematics.
Yeah, and Jeff is one of the players that I always like to keep an eye on because he always comes with his own brew, whether it's modern or standard. He always has a unique take on the format. He's always doing something a little different. And if you're looking for a deck that is a little off the beaten path, Jeff is going to be the one that's going to lead you to it.
He also is a player that tries to question the norms. He was a big proponent of this black-white control deck in the previous standard format when Abzan was running rampant. And he's even done a lot of work in modern, playing with 61, 63, 64 card decks with his Kiki Core deck, trying to utilize the main deck space for some sideboard singletons because it's a toolbox style deck. So I've seen him play, 64 main, 11 cards in his sideboard. Because you have up to 15. That way you can just have some of these cards in your main deck to hedge for those matchups, and then just side down to 60 when you know what singletons you don't need in your deck, which is really interesting. It's pretty common knowledge where if you have any one single card in your deck that you want to draw in a match or every matchup, you want to only have 60 cards, as that increases your chance of seeing that card. But Jeff, with his mathematics background, feels like it doesn't hurt the percentages of seeing particular cards that much to have more cards than that in your deck. Plus, the benefit of being a toolbox deck with Court of Calling outweighs the downside of reducing the percentages of seeing those cards in your opening hand or in the first few turns. So that is, the math behind it is way above my head, and I don't understand it. But I definitely give credit
where
credit.
Jeff is a number scientist.
Yeah,
so
I'll give credit where credit is due, just to try and think outside the box and experiment a little bit.
Yeah.
And he's been insanely successful in Modern with doing that.
Yeah, he has. His Kiki Core deck has really done some good work in the format.
Jeff's going to start out here with a Hissing Quagmire. Cedric just has a tapped land for himself. And Evolving Wilds is going to get another land tapped for Jeff Hoogland. And both players are going to take the first couple of turns off. But once we get into the mid-game, turns 3, 4, and 5 is where we're going to see some powerful spells flying back and forth.
Yeah, and one nice thing about this is we won't be in a situation where Jeff is stuck with a bunch of languishes that are a little suboptimal in the format. There's a good chance that he still wants to keep in some number because those tokens can be a problem, but certainly not 4, and I would be surprised to see 2 in his hand at the same time.
Well, Cedric's just going to pass with 3 mana. No Read the Bones this time. Jeff's going to play his 4th land and pass it back. Let's see if Cedric has some action, maybe a Gideon. There is that aforementioned Gideon. He's going to make a Knight. And then pass the turn to Jeff. No Anguished Unmaking for Jeff. Let's see if he has a Ruinous Path that's going to take care of the Gideon. He will have a 2/2 Knight token.
And because Cedric knows that a lot of the removal is probably taking out of the deck, this Knight token is a little bit more likely to do some work. So I really like Cedric's decision here pre-board when he knows there's a lot of removal to make the emblem. And obviously you saw his hand, so that was a good reason too. But post-board, I really like making a Knight because it's likely that Jeff took out a lot of his 1-for-1 removal. And this Knight can actually deal 6 or 8 damage or something like that.
Which can add up once you get to the late game where you're using things like Sorin to get a lot of value.
Yeah.
Here's another Knight token.
And did Cedric not attack?
It looks like he did not attack.
Giving Jeff a little breathing room. He knows he beat him pretty bad that game 1.
Oh, well, Jeff's going to go ahead and use
Wow.
a Ruinous Path to take care of that second Gideon, a Virulent Plague to take care of the tokens that Gideon happened to have on the battlefield. Looks like Cedric has another copy of Gideon in his hand, and it looks pretty embarrassing right now.
Yeah, he can take it up. Jeff has got to run out of Ruinous Path types effects at some point. Usually these decks don't have room for that many. So I like Cedric just taking it up and thinking that there's a good chance this will go pretty far, but Jeff just has him at every turn. Soren takes out Gideon, and Jeff is in a commanding position this game.
Yeah, Cedric has had 3 Gideons in a row. Night token, 2 Ruinous Paths, and a Virulent Plague have taken care of them all. This third Gideon decided to tick up and start getting into the red zone the next turn, but Jeff is able to land a Soren Grim Nemesis, -5 to deal 5 damage to that Gideon. And let's see what Cedric has to come back.
And normally in a control mirror, Cedric would love to have a turn 4, a turn 5, and a turn 6 Gideon, but Jeff just happened to have not only an answer for all of them, but answers that kept the board clean and left Jeff with some permanence on his side of the board that could continue to generate value. If Jeff is able to untap with this Soren, that bodes extremely poorly for Cedric.
So a Read the Bones from Cedric, followed by a Duress, taking the Ob Nixilis out of Jeff's hand, leaving him with just a Grasp of Darkness, and then an Anguished Unmaking is going to take care of that Gideon, and Jeff is in a real rough spot.
Yeah.
Hissing Quagmire is going to get activated, attack Cedric for 2, bringing him down to 13, but then Jeff's just going to pass the turn back. A Swamp from Jeff, passing the turn back, or a Swamp from Cedric, pass the turn back to Jeff. He's just going to fire up the same Hissing Quagmire and put it in the red zone.
And the creature lands are quite good in this matchup because outside of Grasp of Darkness, there's really no good way to deal with them.
Well, Grasp is going to take care of that Hissing Quagmire. This would be like perfect time for something like
Another Gideon?
Well, another Gideon would be good, but also something like Seasons Past for Jeff, or a Dark Petition, or a Dark Petition to find one.
Yeah.
Here's the 4th Gideon for Jeff Hoogland. He's going to plus it, planning to get it into the battlefield next turn. And Jeff just drew his 3rd Ruinous Path. It's going to take care of the Gideon.
Wow. And 4 Gideons not being good enough is phenomenal. The other thing that's interesting about this is one of the roundabout ways that you can deal with Virulent Plague is just make 2 emblems with Gideon. But that is not going to be possible anymore.
All right, well, here comes a Thought Knot Seer from Cedric. Jeff is not able to play his Grasp of Darkness to take care of it.
2 Virulent Plagues are not nearly as good as 1 in this matchup. Jeff can feel pretty secure that he's probably not going to die to tokens, but he does have to worry about the non-token threats at this point.
Well, there is 6 going to come across. With the Shambling Event, it's going to bring Jeff down to 17, Cedric back up to 15. Jeff has a copy of Sylvan Advocate and just going to pass the turn back to Cedric. Looks like he has another Anguished Unmaking in hand, though.
Yeah, I really like firing off the Anguished Unmaking. Cedric has the opportunity to do a lot of work on Jeff's life total and potentially close this game out. He knows that Jeff is running on very little, and if Jeff doesn't top deck something soon, Cedric is likely to just kill him. So Cedric is cutting off those draw steps. Knows that he'll probably need to use a card to kill that Sylvan Advocate at some point anyway. And I really like that use of Anguished Unmaking.
Well, the attack from that Thought Knot Seer and the Shambling Vent is going to bring Jeff Hoogland down to 11. Going to put Cedric back up to 14. It looks like when Jeff went to draw his card for the turn, he saw the second card down, so we're just waiting for a judge to correct it. He'll get a warning for looking at extra cards, likely just going to draw the top card of his deck and have to shuffle the rest of his deck.
Yeah. So one thing about Jeff's deck is one of the big reasons that he's splashing green is for Seasons Past. It is an absolute haymaker in these mid-range mirrors. That said, it's a pretty expensive card that doesn't have any impact on the board the turn you play it. So if Jeff didn't have a relevant card this turn, he may find himself in a situation where on the following turn he could draw Seasons Past, an all-star in the matchup, and have it not be good enough because he just would have been dead too soon.
Well, he's got a Tireless Tracker here. This is going to bring with it 2 clues since he has an Evolving Wilds. Doesn't look like Cedric has a Grasp of Darkness to get rid of it. So here Jeff has a chance to draw some cards maybe try and draw himself out of this.
Yeah, this is pretty relevant too because he's going to be able to sacrifice a clue to make his tireless tracker 4 power so that it can trade with the Thought-Knot Seer if Cedric decides to attack. And Jeff will not only get cards off the clues but also off the Thought-Knot Seer dying. So Jeff can go from a situation where he basically had nothing going on to all of a sudden, like 4 cards in his hand on his turn.
So Cedric's going to play a Read the Bones.
So the reprieve for Jeff is that Cedric doesn't have an answer. Unfortunately, Cedric might find an answer and another card to go along with it.
He's got to bottom both, draw 2 cards.
And if Cedric has a removal spell, Jeff is still going to be in kind of dire straits. Looks like Cedric did bring in that Linvala, though. I think I thought a glimpse of it in his hand. So that was a card I wasn't sure if he would bring in. But I'm happy to see that I'll be able to see it in action and evaluate it.
If he doesn't have a removal spell here, there's a chance that he just attacks and trades.
Yeah, that Tireless Tracker is likely to generate even more value if it sticks around, but Cedric seems to value his Thought-Knot Seer on the table just to prevent Jeff from drawing an extra card. I think Cedric is looking to ride this Linvala to victory, and he thinks that Jeff will see less cards if he doesn't get an extra draw from that Thought-Knot Seer dying.
Yeah. He's just going to play the Linvala and pass the turn. No triggers, just a 5/5 flyer for 6. Perfectly fine. Jeff's going to sack a clue on Cedric's end step.
And there's a good chance that Jeff doesn't have Ultimate Price in his hand. There's a good chance that he has cards like Ruinous Path, which he already used a lot of, and cards like Grasp and Darkness, because they deal with Thought-Knot Seer as well as the creature lands. So that leaves, Ultimate Price as the only, removal spell that is likely to kill this Linvala, and there's a good chance that Jeff doesn't have them in post board.
Well, Jeff used a Transgress the Mind, just saw 2 copies of Transgress in Cedric's hand. He's going to play another Tireless Tracker and then pass the turn. I think what I would have liked seeing the clue being sacrificed on Jeff's turn. That way, if he happens to find a land, he can just play it and get 2 clues from his Tireless Trackers, since he hadn't played a land that turn.
Yeah, I like that also. It would also mean that if Cedric has a... Well, yeah, I agree.
Oh.
That said, if he doesn't draw a land, whatever he draws could be vulnerable to discard spells. So that's a good reason not to do it.
Correct, because he did see the 2.
Right, Transgress.
The 2 Transgress. So it looks like he found an Evolving Wilds. It's going to get him a couple clues for his Tireless Tracker. And it looks like he has a white card in hand, so let's see if it's something that impacts the board.
Yeah, I'd mentioned how I didn't think Ultimate Price would be in post board. I think what Jeff is looking to draw to is going to be an Anguished Unmaking, which is a little scary because with Jeff's life total at 3, he may find himself dead even if he does draw an answer for that Linvala.
All right.
And Jeff is cracking. He's digging deep. He's hoping to find something that can potentially deal with this Linvala. And passing it back might mean that Jeff truly is drawing dead.
Yeah, Cedric's going to use a Transgress the Mind here to see if the coast is clear, to fire up that...
And Jeff just extends the hand. He knows he can't deal with the Linvala, and that is game. Cedric takes it down. And
So
Cedric has just been killing this.
he has.
I mentioned it yesterday. I don't know how many of our viewers heard me say this, but Cedric went 12 and 3 at the GP last weekend. And he was playing the same white-black control deck. It was the first time he had picked it up. He had no practice and did extremely well with it. And now that he's got some reps in, Jerry T's got to watch himself. Cedric